episode 452 of Cinematary. I'm your host, Zach Dennis, and I'm here with
Andrew Swafford.
And in today's episode, we're going to be continuing our Young Critics Watch Old Movies series with 1930s All Quiet on the Western Front, which personally, I was the one like putting this on the ballot every year, so I'm just glad that we've now forced ourselves to watch it and the people to listen to it. So,
yeah,
signed off on
I'm
me.
I'm glad to have finally watched it. Thank you for insisting that it is a great movie, worthy of our attention.
But in part one, we're really gonna be sticking to one movie, which quite honestly we kind of did to a degree last week with the last episode with Spider-Verse. But we're really gonna stick to one movie with this one, and as they say,
you might sneak in a little pairing.
Yeah, it pairs with it, so it's fine. We literally talked about Spider-Verse and a Nicole Hoff-Center comedy, so it didn't pair as well.
Yeah.
Unless Nicole Hoff-Center wants to write a Spider-Man movie, which I'd be into.
I don't want any more directors than are already stuck in the Marvel machine to become stuck in the Marvel machine. It's not like a Marvel thing. It's the Nicole Hoff-Center movie, and it's like Peter Parker's like, in his mid-40s, is questioning things, having a midlife crisis. It's friends with money, but your friend who has money is the Green Goblin.
There you go. No, we're gonna take me down to Asteroid City. So we're gonna talk about Asteroid City, the latest Wes Anderson movie, which just recently came out. It got a big response out of Cannes, but it has now been released theatrically. This one, it is set in a fictional American desert town circa 1955, where the Junior Stargazer Space Cadet Convention is happening. It's organized to bring together students and parents from across the country for fellowship and scholarly competition. But it is disrupted by world-changing events. This has to be one of his more robust, star-studded cast, and that's tough to say now at this point. But there's also a lot of heavy. Usually there's a pretty strong cast, but there's a lot of heavy hitters in this. Tom Hanks is in this movie, which I feel like
that's true. Steve Carell.
Steve Carell's in it.
People that you wouldn't necessarily expect to be in a Wes Anderson movie.
Yeah, a bunch of new faces. Bryan Cranston's in his first one, but a lot of heavy.
Is this the first Scarlett Johansson Wes Anderson film?
No, she did a voice, I believe.
Isle of Dogs.
Was she in Isle of Dogs? But y'all can fact check me. I'm pretty sure though she did a voice in Isle of Dogs.
Mm-hmm. I think you're right.
But this is their first time on screen. But there's a bunch of before we get into it, there's a bunch of different kind of. I think the main storyline that you're following is Jason Schwartzman's character, who's for all intents and purposes the lead. He's a war photographer whose wife has just recently died. Well, not recently, 3 weeks ago, but he has not told his kids yet, which has a nice little comedy to the beginning of the movie. His father-in-law, played by Tom Hanks, is supposed to come and meet them because their car is broken down. They're in Asteroid City where this convention is. His one son, who's I forgot what his actual name is, but his nickname is Brainiac.
His
Woodrow.
name was Woodrow, which I thought
his name
was
is
very
Woodrow,
weird because I only think of Woodrow Wilson.
Yeah, that's very unfortunate. But yeah, Woodrow, but his nickname is Brainiac, is part of this convention, but he has 3 young daughters, and so Tom Hanks's character is coming to pick up the daughters, and they're gonna, after this convention happens, gonna go and live with him for a time as they kind of recollect their life. Among the other people, you have Scarlett Johansson, who is playing a movie starlet who also has a daughter in this convention. Other people who have kids in the convention include Liev Schreiber, Stephen Park, and then you have folks who are just working in the town, including Steve Carell, Matt Dillon. You have Maya Hawke playing a teacher who has the number of students who are coming to this convention. And then you have, this is kind of where it starts to get kind of tough to explain the movie, because all of this that I've just described is actually a play called Asteroid City. And the movie, the framing device that you're introduced to the movie with is that you're watching a television program that's hosted by Bryan Cranston's character, that is a television program about the making of the play, with the play being Asteroid City. So you have a story within a story within a story.
Wait, is it a story within a story within a story, or is it a story within a story?
It's a story within a story within a story.
What's the third one?
It's television program, the story that you're watching that's inside the television program, and
the movie we're watching.
And the thing that's in the television program, for all intents and purposes, is like how the movie was, or how the play came about, and then the play.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess it could be also a story within a story. I don't know. It's on. To be fair, it's a little confusing to get into it like right off the gate. But
I don't know if it ever registered to me that I was watching a television program as opposed to a movie about the play.
It might be. I don't know. It's a bit convoluted at the beginning. You kind of have to jump on its wavelength. But in like the television program of the play, you're also introduced to characters such as Edward Norton, who is the playwright, Adrian Brody, who's directing the play, and then a lot of the other actors are played by the same people, like Jason Schwartzman and Scarlett Johansson and people like that. So. But yeah, so this is West's. He's kind of getting a little prolific at the moment. But what did you make, Andrew? I was going to call you Asteroid. What did you make Asteroid of Asteroid City?
I feel like my people were being represented well. No, I liked Asteroid City well enough. It's probably not one of my favorite Wes Anderson movies, but I've not been super hot on his recent run since Grand Budapest Hotel. French Dispatch was kind of just bounced right off of me. Isle of Dogs got such abysmal reviews that I didn't watch it. But
honestly, I've seen it twice now, and I really don't remember much of it.
Yeah, and this one I think is the one that I like the most of the two that I've seen of his recent movies. It is much more of a straightforwardly Wes Anderson movie than The French Dispatch was. That one was really structurally ambitious. It was kind of an anthology film that had like a animated sequence in it, and all this like intertextual stuff going on. This one still has that framing device that you're talking about, Zach, but it's still pretty, that it is focused on the central narrative at hand. I don't know how much I love the narrative itself. It feels like a lot of Wes Anderson tropes on one level, and the MacGuffin that kind of keeps the plot rolling about this UFO and an alien who wants to take an asteroid back didn't really feel super impactful to me. But I did like a lot of the acting and a lot of the character work, and I thought that the script was pretty funny throughout. My thought about the framing device and how that's working in the movie, maybe not particularly revelatory, because I think this is kind of like on the surface of the text of the movie. It seems like it is Wes Anderson kind of explaining himself to a certain extent, explaining why he makes movies the way he does, that are so artificial looking and like flat, with all these characters who just kind of deliver their lines with such a deadpan affect. This movie involves several characters who are dealing with some really difficult emotional stuff, but who don't really know how to express it just face to face with other people, and so they kind of use their work, or they use their art to try to process it in some way, and you see that with the characters played by Ed Norton and Adrian Brody, who are both kind of like on the outside of the frame story. They say things more or less to that effect, and you also can see this with the Scarlett Johansson character and the Jason Schwartzman character inside the movie. So if you are invested in like Wes Anderson as an artist and kind of trying to figure out how he works on a psychological level, I think that it's interesting on that level. I don't know if this is going to really play to people who aren't super aware of who Wes Anderson is, because I think it does require a certain amount of knowledge of the context in which this movie is coming. But I also wonder if like you're gonna like this movie if you're new to Wes Anderson, because you know when I list off my favorite Wes Anderson movies, which are like Fantastic Mr. Fox, Moonrise Kingdom, Grand Budapest Hotel, those were like the Wes Anderson movies that came out when I was sort of coming of age and becoming a cinephile. And he is such a gateway drug director for a lot of people. You know, the craft and the artistic choices are just so out there and on the surface in your face that if you've never seen a movie like this before, it can really like open some doors for you. So I do think that, you know, it's possible that even if you don't know that much about Wes Anderson as a director, that just the style, like the pop of this movie may be enough to grab you. But, you know, there is more to explore there if you have like a lot of knowledge of the guy's career.
Yeah. I got three things. One, I think I differ with you a little bit. I found this framing device to be a little bit tougher to get into than the French Dispatch is a little wonky, but I found it to be still more straightforward as like and we talked about this when it came out, like as a, you know, story A, story B, story C. Like it's kind of, you know, it's kind of one of those, you know, I remember Michael talking about it, like, you know, you might like A and B and C doesn't do anything for me, but it's very like, you know, it's segmented into different things, while this one is a little bit more complex, because it's doing some different things. It's not, you know, I agree, not completely off of like Wes Anderson's sphere, but just a little bit different. The second thing I was thinking about with this one, this is probably, I mean, honestly, I think since as far back as like Rushmore and Bottle Rocket, this is his most American movie that he's made in a very long time. A lot of his recent stuff I've enjoyed it, but has felt very like, you know, he's living in Europe, like he's very like European focus, you know, or like inspired at this point. Like,
and I think Isle of Dogs is very Japanese, for better or worse.
Yeah, for better or worse, that's, you know, more Japanese. You know, he's the guy went on a Kurosawa kick or something one week. But I mean, like Grand Budapest, Steve Zissou, French Dispatch. I mean, a lot of these feel, even Fantastic Mr. Fox feels like they feel very like European influenced. And this one, to me, immediately I was like, this is really fascinating, because this is the most, for somebody who doesn't seem all that interested in America, this is like his most American movie, and it felt very harkened back to like his early days making movies out of Texas. It's not just the landscape, but just kind of what he's kind of exploring with the characters. You know, you do have like this, you think about it, it's taking place in the 50s. This is, you know, post 55. So you got kind of post World War II, pre-Vietnam, just kind of this. A lot of them are very like American idyllic. You know, the Jason Schwartzman character is kind of fighting that American ideal, but you look at like his father-in-law, the Tom Hanks character, who literally like has a golf course like where he lives. A lot of the families kind of coming in are very buttoned up, like American families.
Steve Carell's like selling real estate out in the West.
You have these really clever like little bits where like he has a gazillion like machines that, you know, you normally like there's like a Coke machine and there's a snack machine. He has one that sells real estate, and they're just like little plots of land, and there's this scene with Liev Schreiber that's just really funny, where he's talking about selling the land. The third thing is I really liked the movie, but it's easily the most inscrutable Wes Anderson movie I've for me personally since probably Steve Zissou, which is another movie that I've appreciated over time as I've watched it and kind of understood the wavelength that it's on, but initially was very like it was unreadable for me.
This like one on a thematic level, like you're not sure what you're supposed to be thinking about.
Yeah, like in this one, I'm not so sure what I'm supposed to be thinking about, because yeah, like there definitely are the Wes Anderson tropes. So you have like the dead wife, you have the kind of characters in flux. You have, you know, the way the dictation, how they're talking. You have all these different things that you're familiar with, but you know, I'm getting through the movie and I'm going, like, where it just doesn't, it didn't have that emotional landing that, you know, you think of like Grand Budapest movie, which is you know, has all this stuff kind of, you know, you're thinking about all this kind of stuff and it has just that thud emotional ending that just kind of rips your heart out. The same with stuff like Fantastic Mr. Fox and Rushmore. Like it just has that emotional, you know. The thing that I talk about with people who maybe don't like Wes Anderson is like, yeah, he's doing his thing, but like it's not for nothing. Like he does do it to like pull out this emotional through line, and this one, I was just kind of, I'm like, I kind of was going like, where is this leading to? A lot of the parts I like, and a lot of the parts I'm following, and a lot of the parts I'm enjoying, but I'm the path forward is very hazy for me.
Yeah, I would say that Wes Anderson's movies have gotten less and less directly emotional as his career has gone on. Like if you go back to something like The Royal Tenenbaums, like that is a fairly raw movie about just like family dysfunction. Darjeeling Limited is, you know, a movie about grief, and I would say that this movie is also a movie about grief, but it's coming at it from such a different angle due to the place that Wes Anderson is at in his career at this point.
Well, I also think that's why I mentioned it feels like this. And that's why another reason why I was like, this is the most American movie he's made in a long time. And I think it's one that like I really want to reserve a lot of judgment for a rewatch. I know, again, it's like Zissou. I know what he's doing. I kind of understand what he's doing here. I need to come in with that frame of mind ahead of time, because, like I said, it's 1955. It's like this American style of, you know, you constantly kind of think they're gonna get to this part, you know, and you have parts like with the mother in the Tupperware. You have all these different pieces where you're like, oh, this is going to kind of lead to that moment when it really just activates. And it's almost like he's, you know, it's almost like he's kind of going like this stagnated American, we're just like, they're just unable, they're inhibited to do that. And that's why when I kind of started thinking about that late in the movie, that really clicked the whole story within the story, because it's, you know, almost to me, I don't think that this is how he was necessarily trying to do it, but I'm like, to me, I like, and this kind of goes into the movie I can talk about a little bit later, Close Encounters, because this is definitely what this is working on. But the way I was viewing it was the Asteroid City. You can like it was a play, or what you can say it was a play, but it was something that actually happened. Like it was like in the play and everything else. That's the framing device outside of it is just how are we going to process this?
Well, it's also kind of a quarantine movie too, because all the people in the titular Asteroid City get stuck there and are not allowed to leave by United States mandate, and like they have a lot of processing of that to do.
Yeah. I mean, you hit that point late in the movie where like Jason Schwartzman like leaves the play to go to talk to Adrian Brody, and is like, what is my character doing? Like, what's going on? You know, and I think that's what kind of started to click with me, is it's just like, I didn't get so I kind of let go of like the holdup of the different, and trying to follow the different framing devices, and kind of viewed it as this moment of trauma, you know, grief and trauma for like the Jason Schwartzman family who lost their mother and their wife. But also just like the nature, you know, he presents it in such a quirky way, but like, I don't think we know how we would really react and be able to process if like an alien just came down and like again just like grabbed the thing and went back up. Like I don't know how like we would be able to mentally process that. And it shows a little bit of that like when the government's like trying to like check in on, you know, quarantine and like check in on the people, you know, immediately after the thing. But I guess that's where my head was at when I was kind of trying to process this movie. And I don't know necessarily if that's what he was going for, but again, like I think that kind of came out of just very recently watching Close Encounters, which is also a movie about how trying to process trauma.
Right. And I'm curious to hear your Close Encounters thoughts, but here's a thought that I had in response to something you said, Zach. There, in the framing device, you often see people rehearsing and kind of talking about things that are going to happen in the play within the movie later on down the line. And one thing that gets discussed is Jason Schwartzman's character burns his hand on a stovetop, and he's asked why he did that. And in the framing device, he says something along the lines of like, well, I needed a reason to be crying, like an excuse for why I'm crying right now. And then the Wes Anderson character played by Ed Norton is like, no, probably better not to say that. Probably better just to leave it implied. And then later on in the movie, when you get to that moment when Jason Schwartzman does burn his hand, he doesn't say that line, but you know that there's meant to be, you know, an unspoken emotion there because it has been spoken earlier in the movie. And that seems to be a moment of Wes Anderson kind of showing his hand and explaining, like, you know, all of these small character moments that may just seem like, you know, one-off quirks are probably hiding some, you know, deep well of feeling that the characters don't really know how to express or aren't comfortable expressing. There's even a moment where Scarlett Johansson says to the Jason Schwartzman character, like, you and I are very similar people because we are dealing with a lot of difficult emotions that we don't like talking about. And then he says, can we change the subject? Which is very funny. But yeah, I mean, I don't really know what else to do with it other than, you know, say that, you know, this is Wes Anderson just explaining, like, you know, I make these movies that seem kind of like light and frivolous, but there is more going on underneath the surface if you're willing to look at them.
Yeah. I think that's a good transition to Close Encounters, which we can kind of just still loop in the other movie with it, which I watched last week, and it took me forever to finally watch this. I don't know why. It's, you know, you got Spielberg. It's one of his early ones. It's pretty well beloved. But I had seen people kind of compare Asteroid City to this. And so for those unfamiliar, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, it came out in 1977, 2 years after Jaws. And it stars Richard Dreyfuss, Terry Garr, Bob Balaban, and Francois Truffaut. And it's about this one night in, where are they? Is it Indiana or Iowa? Midwest. They encounter these UFOs. And so a lot of people are, like, for lack of a better word, like, touched by them. Richard Dreyfuss' character works as a line worker, and so the power goes out when these things come, and he has to leave and is, like, driving, trying to find different things that he can help with power lines and things like that, and he gets lost, and then is, like, sitting there at a stop. And again, like, I know, like, Spielberg, man, such a great director. You have this wonderful moment where he's sitting at the train track stop, and a car comes up behind him and honks, and he kind of waves them, and, like, they go around, and then these other lights like, you see the lights come down and go behind him. He does the same thing, and then he's not abducted by the UFO, but it kind of, like, jars him. It starts playing with all the gears, starts turning stuff off. Everything is kind of going crazy. This bright red light shines on. And honestly, it's such an amazing moment because it's all practical. It's kind of terrifying because he's just there. You don't see anything in the car. You just see this blinding red light, and the car is just shaking uncontrollably, and then it goes away and it's gone. And that happens to a lot of people. And so afterwards, like, he has this intense red tan line, and all the people who are also kind of touched by the aliens have the same thing. And so the rest of the movie is just him literally going insane. Some people, you know, I think there's a little bit of it kind of like breaking away from again, it's kind of a little bit of a nuclear family story. So breaking away from that nuclear family mold. But also, again, like, I feel like it'd be an insanely traumatic experience to have a UFO come, and not just for the people who are like have been like touched by these by the ships and like, you know, had these like these moments, but just having the existence of UFOs in general, I think would be, and like confirmed, would be a very traumatic incident for humans, like, to comprehend life outside of ourselves. And so to me, it's just like his descent into madness is also just like him trying to like process like through this form of trauma. And you know, it comes with him kind of, you know, I saw a lot of writing about how, you know, one of the kind of radical things is you have the dad kind of leaving behind the family. It's not the mom leaves and they have to kind of, it's the dad. He leaves, not to spoil a movie from 1977, but like he ends up going on, you know, they have this team of people who they kind of trade off with the aliens. They like the people who have been abducted for many, many years up to this come back, and then they like send this team with the aliens. And Richard Dreyfuss is among them. He just completely leaves his family and goes. And it's this, to me, it's kind of this movie of just like processing just these traumatic, like, incomprehensible events, because like there's no book or game plan to like how to do this, you know. It's all, everything happening afterwards is just the government trying to do everything they can to like quell the whole thing. But then you also have like the Francois Truffaut, who is this I guess alien scientist, like that's kind of, he's just chasing the aliens, and Bob Balaban, who is playing his interpreter, who are kind of just on this quest to like understand what's going on. And it's a really it's honestly a super strange movie. I can't, like, it's crazy to me that Spielberg goes 2 years after Jaws, it starts the blockbusters, this massive hit, and then makes this movie, which honestly for the first 2 acts of it is just scatterbrained.
Yeah.
It's just like,
you would think that it would be just kind of a straightforward blockbuster about aliens, like E.T. kind of is. But it has you know, it has all the like the action, the entertainment, like just those Spielberg moments that keep you like propelled in it. But it's also just like, if you look at it, it's super meandering. It's just, a lot of it is Terry Garr and the family getting mad at Richard Dreyfuss as he's like, because he keeps seeing this image in his head, and it's just, he's just like trying to like, he's building it in the mashed potatoes, he's building it out of like shaving cream. He finally, when they leave the house, like is throwing dirt and plants inside the house and literally building like a diorama of what he's seen in his head. Like, he goes full crazy. It's great. Yeah. I remember most vividly just 2 things about that movie. One of them is the finale sequence, and the other is the mashed potato mountain.
Yeah. Which, honestly, another thing I was thinking about is like post Fabelmans, this is a fascinating movie to watch, because the you have him going mad, which is it's a over dramatized version of like what you see with his mother and father that's you know, depicted narratively in the Fabelmans, but it's not completely off. You know, you kind of have like this tearing away of the mother father structure, and he has these incredible shots of the kids. He has one where Richard Dreyfuss is just like lying in the tub, just pouring water on himself because he's just unable to, like, he's just, this thing is just completely stuck in his head, and Terry Garr's yelling at him, and the kid comes in, and the oldest son starts yelling at him too, going, you know, you're a coward, you're a coward, you're a coward. And like, it has this scene where like finally she moves him out, and the kid goes back in the room and like turns and is like crying, and like the door's shut. And so you kind of have, like, just thinking back to the Fabelmans, you kind of have like this family kind of ripping apart, and the kids kind of catching the shrapnel of all of it, which is fascinating because this is also the first movie, and then the next one would be AI, that Spielberg wrote all by himself, like that solo writing credit.
Oh wow, I didn't know that.
And so it's kind of interesting thinking about Asteroid City as a movie with like Wes Anderson like kind of processing how he's like what he's doing and like how he's processing the filmmaking process, because to a degree this is similar. Now this is only his second biggest movie. It's not his second movie ever, but it's it's somebody who had been in the business making stuff for a while, so he wasn't some it wasn't some nobody. It was something like he had been making stuff. Jaws was the biggest hit that he had, and then he made this. But it feels very personal, and it feels very personal. And it's kind of interesting. Wes Anderson's been around even longer to this point, and so he's not young, kind of trying to like process all this stuff. This one feels very much like a young writer director like working through some stuff. But it's also just this fascinating movie to me of how not disturbing, but just kind of just uncalculable like processing grief is, because that's what a lot of this movie is, processing grief and trauma. Like this thing happened to them, they don't understand why it happened to them, and they're just trying to find some sort of answer, and they're unable to really find it until you get to this the final act,
which is amazing. The final sequence of Close Encounters is so amazing,
so good. It's so you have like the back and forth music playing between the UFO and this machine that they have, the communication. It's so good.
Which, to tie it back into Asteroid City again, feels like it's expressing this similar idea of like communicating through art when you don't necessarily have the words to say what you need to say. That's kind of what Steven Spielberg is doing in the movie, and that's also what the alien and Richard Dreyfuss's character are doing back and forth during the finale. But in such a like stunning, evocative way.
And so yeah, I mean, I don't know if I waited too long. If you have not seen Close Encounters of the Third Kind, it's pretty great. I mean, the dude can direct. I haven't watched him. I watched last night, like, because I'm, because Indiana Jones, the new Indiana Jones movie is coming out. So I was like, you know what? Let's watch Crystal Skull again, since that seems to be the ire of the internet. It's not that bad of a movie, y'all. The first 2 acts of it is like pure like full adrenaline Spielberg action. It's fucking great. Like the third act gets a little that alien portion it does not carry the Close Encounters. It gets a little wonky, and you're also like fighting because George Lucas helped write the movie, and so you have like this like retro futurism of George Lucas in the writing battling the like classicism of Steven Spielberg's directing. It's kind of crazy. I don't feel like we like paid enough attention to that when it came out, but dude knows how to direct, and Close Encounters I think is a really, I think it's super meandering for the first 2 acts, but I feel like there's a lot of interesting bits, and it's circulated around the Richard Dreyfuss character. He's very, very good in this movie. And also it's and also another like Asteroid City, like a great like semi anti-government, anti-establishment movie. It's Spielberg. People don't give. I mean, he's been a little bit less on that lately. He got older and was kind of like, oh, I like some government, but early on he's like, fuck the government. So but yeah, Close Encounters, I found it on the web, but it's
you can probably find go to Walmart.
You can go find Close Encounters. But Asteroid City, it's in theaters now. I mean, as I was telling my parents who were gonna go see it, I was like, I mean, Wes Anderson's like a known name at this point. Like, it'll be in regular theaters. It's not like some. I went and saw it at the Art House Theater here, but like but it was also playing in like the multiplex theaters because people know who Wes Anderson is.
Right. And we don't have that many household name auteurs, so I'm glad that he's doing it.
As I always say about Wes, if you don't like him, that's fine. But like, he's gonna I like, you have to at least respect. He's gonna do his thing the way he wants to do it, and like that's just like you you don't get many directors who are just like fully committed to their bit, whether you like it or not. Like there's some who, I'm not super into the bit, but at least they're doing it. We want some of that rather than just, not
anonymous product,
like movie that stars Ryan Reynolds. So,
yeah.
All right, we're gonna take a quick break and we're gonna get real anti-establishment in part 2 with All Quiet on the Western Front. And we're back with part 2 of episode 452 of Cinematary. In this part, we're going to be continuing our Young Critics Watch Old Movies series with 1930's All Quiet on the Western Front. Directed by Louis Milestone from a script by Maxwell Anderson and George Abbott, and based on the novel of the same name by Eric Maria Remarque. The film follows a group of German schoolboys taught into enlisting at the beginning of World War I by their jingoistic teacher. The story is told entirely through the experiences of the young German recruits and highlights the tragedy of war through the eyes of individuals. A great number of German Army veterans were living in Los Angeles at the time of filming and were recruited as bit players and technical advisors. Around 2,000 extras were utilized during production. Among them was future director Fred Zinnemann, who was fired for impudence, which I thought was kind of funny. The film was shot with 2 cameras side by side, with one negative edited as a sound film and the other edited as an international sound version for distribution in non-English speaking areas. Which, just a quick aside, like The Jazz Singer, which we did in the last episode, 1927, this is 3 years later, and how goddamn advanced is this thing already?
Yeah, that's so true. I didn't think about that.
I was thinking about that just in the beginning parts when like they're doing the basic training and like just the sound of like the boots on the ground, the mud, the stuff like that, the voices,
the explosions.
Yeah, and I'm just like, this is literally just 3 years after The Jazz Singer, where we're sometimes not lining up the singing properly. It's just crazy. Noted comedian Zazu Pitts was originally cast as Paul's mother and completed the film, but preview audiences used to seeing her in comedic roles laughed when she appeared on screen, so Milestone reshot her scenes with Burl Mercer before the film was released. The preview audience remains the only ones who saw Pitts in the role, although she does appear for about 30 seconds in the film's original preview trailer. In the film, Paul is shot while reaching for a butterfly. This scene is different from the book and was inspired by an earlier scene showing a butterfly collection in Paul's home. The scene was shot during the editing phase, so the actors were no longer available, and Milestone had to use his own hand as Paul's. Due to its anti-war and perceived anti-German messages, Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party opposed the film. During and after its German premiere in Berlin on December 4th, 1930, Nazi brown shirts under the command of Joseph Goebbels disrupted the viewings by setting off stink bombs, throwing sneezing powder in the air, and releasing white mice in the theaters, eventually escalating to attacking audience members perceived to be Jewish and forcing projectors to shut down. They repeatedly yelled out Judenfilm, or Jewish film, while doing this. Goebbels wrote about one such disruption in his personal diary, saying, quote, "Within 10 minutes, the cinema resembled a madhouse. The police are powerless. The embittered crowd takes out its anger on the Jews. The first breakthrough in the West. Jews out, Hitler is standing at the gates. The police sympathize with us. The Jews are small and ugly. The box office outside is under siege. Window panes are broken. Thousands of people enjoy the spectacle. The screening is abandoned, as is the next one. We have won. The newspapers are full of our protests, but not even the Berliner Tagblatt dares to call us names. The nation is on our side. In short, victory."
Yikes. Do you know if the Nazis did other, like, public protest feels like the wrong word, but acts of terrorism maybe in movie theaters? Were there other movies that were the target of their ire?
Not anything that comes to mind. They got much more, especially with UFA, like were quicker to just ban like they just wouldn't allow it.
Right, but this is before they had the power to do that.
This is before they came into like full power. So like so the Nazi campaign was successful, and German authorities outlawed the film on December 11th, 1930. A heavily cut version was briefly allowed in 1931 before the Nazis came to power in 1933, and the film was outlawed again. The film was finally re-released in Germany on April 25th, 1952, in the Capitol Theater in West Berlin. Between 1930 and 1941, this was one of many films to be banned in Victoria, Australia, on the ground of pacifism by the chief censor Cresswell O'Reilly. However, it was said to enjoy, quote, a long and successful run in other states, though the book was banned nationally. The film was also banned in Italy and Austria in 1931, with the prohibition officially raised only in the 1980s, and in France up to 1963. The original international sound version of the film, lasting 152 minutes, was first shown in Los Angeles on April 21st, 1930, and premiered in New York on April 25th, 1930. On its initial release, Variety wrote, "The League of Nations could make no better investment than to buy up the master print, reproduce it in every language, to be shown in all the nations until the word war is taken out of the dictionaries." The New York Daily News in 1930 said, "All Quiet on the Western Front depicts a war which is wild, mad, raging with fight." Universal's audible screen production of Eric Maria Remarque's sensational bestseller is so magnificent, so powerful, that it hardly behooves mere words to tell of its heart-rending appeal or its dramatic fire, its breathtaking battle shots in which men stab and kill each other for the glory of war. It is not only a great motion picture because it has been built firmly and consistently upon the plot of a great book, its smack of directorial genius, nothing short of this, sensitive performances by a marvelous cast, and the most remarkable camera work which has been performed on either silent or sound screen round about the Hollywood studios. On that note, let's talk a little bit about All Quiet on the Western Front, which kind of echoing that. It was a technical marvel in 1930. For those who have not seen it and maybe are interested, it looks just as good now in 2023 as it does in 1930. Like, I watched it; they have a really, really nice print of it on archive.org, and it's stunning. And not only just the war sequences, even the small sequences where like they're walking through, the trenches, or they're walking in no man's land, stuff like that, to the point where Spielberg actually said a lot of this movie inspired how he approached battle sequences in Saving Private Ryan.
Right. Yeah, I can see that. I agree that, like, technically, this movie is very impressive, especially for a movie that came out in 1930. Compare it again to The Jazz Singer, which is just so unambitious cinematically. It's just shots of people talking to each other, right? The way that the war sequences get shot in this are pretty harrowing. There were two in particular that really stand out to me. One is this montage sequence that is cutting back and forth between you watching like a soldier feeding bullets into a machine gun, while that is intercut with like these lateral tracking shots throughout the war zone. And what's interesting to me about that sequence is that it does not follow any sort of hero or character, right? It's not like 1917 where you're kind of like living the third person shooter video game of this character's life. It's just this blast of here's how scary and intense this would have been to experience. And another sequence that stands out to me in that regard is right after one of the central soldiers has died, there's a conversation between them and several characters about somebody who wants to take their boots. Like, right when they find out this person's not going to make it, or right when they find out this person has lost their leg, they say, well, can I have your boots then? And the character ends up getting this person's boots, sees this person die, and they're like holding on to these boots is so melancholy for them. And then the next several shots are just like close-ups on first like these boots and then like the boots of lots of soldiers as they are like marching into battle, kind of enthused, and like one character even says like, oh man, I'm happy to go to war in boots as nice as these, but like you see people just kind of get gunned down over and over, regardless of what they're wearing, you know.
Is it Oh, okay. I thought it was because so the guy, it starts with the guys talking about the boots at the beginning because he's like, my uncle gave these to me, aren't they great? And he's like kind of bragging about it, and then he loses his leg and eventually dies, and so the next guy takes the boots, and then he died. I thought it was like people kept like it was almost like a cursed boot, like they kept like handing them to more people, and every time like the person would just would be killed. But yeah, I mean that makes a little bit more sense.
I don't know. You could be right, but I just really liked the artistic decision to show us these battle sequences from like the knee down, like especially in 1930
you just
when
see
like
a collapse.
The war picture is not really like this super codified thing. Like American movies have only been trying to make big spectacles like this for a little over a decade. And it was just a neat trick, a neat camera trick to see them pull off.
Yeah, so I talked about it a little bit at the beginning. I've been really pushing to watch this for a while because it was really the first time I watched this, it was kind of one of those, what the fuck is this? This is this is an incredible movie type thing, because I mean it's not coded, it's not hidden, like it's very blatantly anti-war. Like there's multiple conversations in where the soldiers are talking about the futility of the whole thing. There's a great sequence where so you have once they get for I guess to kind of for those who are unfamiliar, you start the movie for the first 25 or so minutes where the kids really are like, the teacher's just like, you got to go and serve the motherland. We got to win this war. We're going to do this for Germany. They got all jacked up. And so, and then they go through basic training. They get a little bit of kind of like, this is going to be different than we thought. Like, they have this great sequence where they're sitting in the classroom and they're like, thinking about the parades and how people are going to perceive them afterwards. And then they get to boot camp, and it's great because not only does it switch from like that fantasy of what they were seeing when they were in the classroom, but you meet him very briefly at the beginning, the mailman who is coming out, he's telling this guy, because of the war I'm coming out of the reserve to be a sergeant. And so he's kind of like the friendly neighborhood mail person, but then he's the drill sergeant at when they get to boot camp, and they're all just like, hey, what's up, Hammy, what's going on, man? And he's just like, and he completely like switches to that second gear, and it's kind of like that first like, you're not at home anymore, guys.
Yeah, because they think they're going to war to like crack open a cold one with the boys.
Yeah,
like this is just like a fun macho thing that guys do together.
Yeah, they're all excited because they're just like, oh, we'll come back, because you do have these soldiers who are marching out, and like people are just like, it's a parade, people are throwing stuff, they think of all the accolades. And so you got a good like 30-ish minutes really before they like really hit the battlefield. And once that happens, it just shit all changes. I think the real moment is when you have one of the guys from the group dies on the first thing that they do. And they have the moment where the guy runs out and like gets the body and brings it back, and the veteran soldiers who are with them, one of the veterans is just like, why did you do that? Like, he's dead, like just leave him. And they're like, it's my friend. And he's like, you almost killed yourself like doing that. That's a corpse. Just toss it to the side. And then you have the long sequence where they're finally in a bunker, and they're just kind of there, and that's when it starts to kind of become like the reality starts to set in with them. And I remember just when I was watching, and so it all leads, you have this moment where some of the veterans as well as the people we've been following the whole movie are sitting around like just kind of talking because they're in between tours into the trenches. And like, they're joking, and the one veteran has this great line where he's talking about like how war should be where the kings and their cabinets like go into a field and like dress to their underwear and just like attack each other until one of them prevails. Yeah, like he's just like that, like that's what it should be. I don't know what. And they just have this like really like long conversation about like what, like they're like, I have nothing against the English. I have nothing against the French. They've done nothing to me. The first time I met one, they were on the battlefield. Like why do I care about this? Pretty much.
Well, World War One is kind of a famously confusing war to really pinpoint like what was the cause of World War One, and I don't feel like I am equipped to answer that question at all. Yeah, somebody shot somebody, and then all of a sudden, like the dominoes started to fall, and everybody was fighting everybody, and that really comes across in this movie too. It doesn't really seem like anybody knows what they're fighting for or really cares what they're fighting for. They were just sort of suckered into it by this jingoistic teacher, which, like, as a quick side note, is very much a thing that still happens now. Like, not exactly with teachers kind of getting up on a stump and like telling their students that they should go to war, though I'm sure that they exist somewhere. But the military goes to schools to recruit students, and they do select certain schools based on what schools they think would be most likely to get students. So like I've worked at 3 different high schools over the course of my career, and the one where I saw a lot of military presence was like a poor white conservative school where like these kids did not have a lot of other prospects, and so like, hey, get your college paid for, live a great story, be a hero, but that's like a lie. It's a trap, and this movie exposes that trap
in such a in such a insightful and just like it really just cuts through. It doesn't. I was thinking, a good comparison movie to this in terms of like World War I anti-war movies is Paths of Glory, and I was reading a review or like a comparison of the two, and they're like not to rank one over the other, but Paths of Glory is much more interested in like the bureaucracy, like that gets that's more interested in like that side of things. And what I think I think All Quiet on the Western Front a little bit more is because it's completely focused on like the people it's actually directly affecting, like the people in the trenches.
These people are not really exposed to the bureaucracy. Like they don't even get to see the bureaucracy,
which is kind of an annoying, so for some people are probably familiar with the 2022 version, which was nominated for an Oscar last year. I remember, I think I mentioned it when I talked about it from TIFF. The director of it, it's German, it's a German production, introduces it as like the kind of almost as the first adaptation of this, and I'm just like, bud, there's been 2, and the first one, sorry, is better than your movie, because it's a movie that's so like influenced by 1917, by Dunkirk, by like this first person shooter ultra realism, like the bullet, you need to be like seeing the bullets coming at you to feel the impact of like the harrowingness of this war. And like it's just like it honestly and also it like has this complete other side plot with a character played by Daniel Bruhl that's just completely about the bureaucracy, and you're like, yeah, but that's not what this movie's about. And that's why what's so effective about this one, because it's not about the bullets coming towards you. You have scenes where like they're sitting there fighting in the trenches, but like the real impact is seeing what those teenagers look like in that classroom, and what they're at mentally midway through, like 25-50% through the movie, and at the end, like they there's something 50 times more harrowing about Paul when he goes on leave and goes back home and is getting like lectured by these academics about, whoa, this is what the German army needs to be doing. They got to take over Paris, they got to take over Flanders, they got to do this. and then he hears his the professor going on again. Like there's something much more impactful about that than having a bunch of bullets and like the sound goes out and shit like that. Like this one I feel like just conveys that message in a better way.
Yeah, there's a very subtle evolution that the actor Lou Ayres, who's playing Paul, goes through over the course of this movie. And I think part of it is maybe his affect, how he carries himself, what kind of facial expressions he makes is kind of the default. And also it might be like the makeup department, like how they make his face appear more like weathered and aged by the end of the movie. But like when he comes back to his teacher's classroom and he sees this like new crop of kids all getting this rah rah let's go to war speech, those kids look so much younger than him, and that may be a casting decision too, of like casting kids who look younger than the kids at the beginning of the movie. I was also kind of reminded of Starship Troopers a little bit, which also has the teacher giving the speech to kids and like eventually younger and younger soldiers being sent to the front because the nation is kind of like running out of people. But yeah, I don't really know where I'm going with that thought. But
well, it does, because like when he comes back, it's the very end of the movie when he comes back, and you still have a couple veterans that he's been around. He at this point he's become a veteran to a degree, even though he's probably I think he's probably 21 at this point, 21, 22. And they're bringing in all these just 18-year-olds. And it's funny to see the role reversed at that point with these hungry teenagers and kind of how Paul treats it. But yeah, I agree. I think that's what I like the most about it, is that the evolution is not showy. It's just this subtle shaving off of all the preconceptions of what he thought of, like who he thought he was. It's just constantly like cutting away and cutting away and cutting away until the ending. I guess at one point they put music at the end, which is big disservice to the movie, because the way it ends is like I described before. He's reaching for that butterfly. You see his hand. He's shot. You just see the hand go limp, and then it is silent, and it cuts to you see the people who the kids at the beginning walking, and it's superimposed on this graveyard, and it's just this fucking harrowing like minute and a half of in silence.
Yeah, and then fade to black, pause, the end. Like they do all the credits up front, which I guess was normal in 1930, but the movie just kind of like leaves you to sit with that feeling, which is really bold. I think.
I mean, it's again like you think I just kind of think about it in the same, in the way in the updated version, and maybe I need to read the book. Maybe this is true to the book. I don't know. But you have like this kind of rogue general to a degree, which feels also kind of like they're like dipping in the paths of glory to also, where you have this rogue general who it's like the war is over, and the general's just like, fuck that, no, we're not going home until we've done it, and sends all the German troops into to fight. And even though the French are over there like, no, we're done, they're just like, well, they're attacking us now, so and Paul, the Paul character dies there, where they're just having this completely unnecessary battle. But I feel like that message is the unnecessariness of it didn't need like that's conveyed.
And to circle back around to this thudding note that the movie ends on, I think that. And maybe you could speak to this and how it's done in the most recent All Quiet on the Western Front movie. But I think that more modern war films tend to end on a note that's like, and that's why we respect the sacrifices that our veterans made, this is why they're heroes. And this movie doesn't really present Paul or anybody else as a hero. It's more of like the way in which they are exploited by this evil system. And even when he's back home after he gets granted leave, like he is so like cut off from the rest of the world and like psychologically scarred and unable to connect with anybody else who hasn't had the experiences that he's had, that like even freedom from it isn't relief. Like he's just kind of like stuck with this thing forever.
Yeah, and he says as much, when he gets back to the two veterans. What's the main guy, the main kind
of
Cat, the main like veteran guy who they really kind of latch on to. He says as much, it's just kind of like, I got home and they haven't seen what we've seen. They haven't been in what we've seen. They also treat in the 2020 the ending is like I said, it's just him getting shot. It's like this really gruesome battle sequence that was again unnecessary. He gets killed, and that's kind of where it ends. The Cat's character also is just kind of treated in such a different way. That one, like that cat is like just looking for a way to get killed, and so they have this thing where earlier in the movie, Paul and Katz have gone, and Cat steals some food from this farmer, and like they barely escape, but they get out of there, and it's kind of this moment for them that kind of bonds them. And at the end of it, at the end of the new one, they do the same thing over again, but this time, Katz doesn't make it. He he gets shot on the way out, and that's how he dies. And it's kind of, it was fine, but then like rewatching this one and the way Katz dies, again, it just goes to like it's a very subtle one. Like he gets kind of hit. You can kind of tell something happened, but Paul's just completely in his head talking, and you don't know it until he carries him all the way back to the medical tent and lays him down, and they're like, "Well, you didn't need to do that. He's dead." And again, like that's how, rather than just the new one just feels like I loop in 1917 and Dunkirk, and even parts of Saving Private Ryan and other kind of more modern war movies, where it just needs to kind of like shake it in your face and be like, this is bad, and this is this is why they feel bad, like stuff like that. And I'm like, this one, again, it's just it's not showy. It's just Paul, like who Paul is just being shaved away, and it's just another cut, it's just another wound that he's taking. That at that he the way he reacts. He just kind of, he doesn't really know how to really react. It's kind of like when his friend dies earlier and he's just like, yeah, I just ran back. Like I don't know what to do. I'm alive still.
What can you do? How can you react if your life and existence in the system is just like a continuous stream of events like this, and there's not really a way out of it? The movie's also not really much of a character study either. In the first 30 minutes to an hour of it, I actually wasn't sure which characters I was supposed to be keeping track of, because you're just kind of seeing this big mass of school kids then turned soldiers, and it's only after a bunch of them just die off that you have like a manageable enough number of characters to really like dig into narratively. And maybe when I go back and rewatch it eventually, I'll be able to kind of pick out Paul and what he's doing in those early sequences.
Yeah, but I think Milestone does that on purpose though, because like it is just kind of this conglomerate. And then it just starts getting shaved off, and Paul just kind of Paul finally just kind of sticks out. And again, that's a difference from the new one, which immediately identifies Paul as the person you're following. That one's also annoying because it spends about 5 minutes in town, and then immediately is moving into the and it's not even in basic training. It immediately goes to the battlefield. You're in the shit. You're in the shit in like 15 minutes, which I felt like is such a disservice to like how like that 30 minutes of setup that you have to have in order to like make the other stuff really stick with you.
But that movie is also fairly long, like this one is. It's 147 minutes. So is it just like way more battle sequences? Because this one only really has 2 or 3.
That one does not have as many of like the kind of interpersonal moments that you get in this one, and like I said, it adds an entirely second side plot with this Daniel Bruhl bureaucrat who's trying to negotiate the end of the war. And so then you're leaving like Paul and that whole story to go to for the most part of the movie on this train with the French leader, where the German and French are trying to like negotiate this end of the war. That just kind of, that again, it's like, that's not, I don't care. That's not what the movie's about. And so, yeah, no, I think this one, like the war sequences are so harrowing, and the people, these people that you follow die, and really there's not too much fanfare with it. You also just have, when the people not necessarily even die, but like you think about his friend Albert, who they both get hurt when the mortars fall, when they're leaving the town. Both Paul and Albert get hurt, and Paul like just has kind of a hemorrhage on the side, and leaves. He thinks he's going to like the room where everybody goes to die, so he kind of goes off for a while, but eventually returns. In the meantime, Albert realizes that his leg's been cut off, and like that whole sequence, and just like the kind of, you see Paul just kind of look at him and leave, and you see Albert holding this photo of the two of them like in uniform, and just kind of has this like that's just, he's not going to see him again because Paul dies, but also just this kind of rupture between, you had these really close friends who all made this joint decision together to like do this, and now they're disjointed because they're either dead or they've been, their lives have been completely changed because they've lost a leg, or they've been, sent home or something like that.
Right. I'm also thinking of the moment where Paul is stuck in a trench or just like a hill in the battlefield, with a friend soldier, I think, who he has mortally wounded, and you just like are in there with them for a really long time as Paul watches this soldier slowly die, and recognizes the humanity of the other person, like makes all these promises to him, like, I'm going to write your wife, I'm going to make sure she wants for nothing, I'm so sorry, please don't die, and that's one reason why I don't really see this movie as being like exclusively an anti-German movie or anything like that. It's just kind of the way in which all of these soldiers from all these countries are all kind of trapped under the same like system or norm, I guess.
Well, trapped under this stupid fucking war. Like what? Yeah. Like who is, like they talk about it? Who's benefiting? What gain are we getting out of this? And
they mention the manufacturers, the arms manufacturers, are making a lot of money off of it, which I thought was an interesting thing to hear a character say in 1930.
Yeah, and this, and honestly, just going back to why I really like this, World War I is such a one. It doesn't get as much attention as World War II, especially like thematically, but it's just such a grimy, really like hard to like, just because you're in the trenches, you got mustard gas, you got barbed wire everywhere. You're literally fighting over like a few yards of land because their trenches are over there and your trenches are there. Like it's just such a stupid war. It's so stupid because you're just fighting over this little tracts of land, and you just have this stretch of no man's land with barbed wire and these mortar holes. And yeah, it's just, you think about the first battle that you see, and it's the French soldiers kind of like hauling it over, and they're just getting peppered because they got the guns there, and you just have like the front line just going dead, 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 dead. And then they kind of make a break and push the Germans and kill a bunch of Germans and push them back. But then the Germans push forward. You're just like again, like they ended up in the same goddamn place that they started, But
right. It feels existentially absurd. Like, why is anyone doing any of this?
It is like, like you ended up in the same trench you were in, but hundreds of people just died in the process. I think it just kind of captures that really well.
And I think the movie's willingness to just stay in those moments of absurdity or bleakness is really admirable. I also really like the sequences that are like when they're kind of in the bunkers beneath the trenches. I don't know if that's the right word, but like it's always just this master shot of like the entire bunker, and you kind of get, and these scenes last a really long time, and you really get the sense of these characters just going stir crazy, just being stuck in there with no food, nothing to do other than stare at each other, and just like hearing bombs going off above their heads constantly, knowing that like any one of them could like seal them in there forever or something. And the movie is really willing to just like stay with those characters for long periods of time through that.
You have the first time they do it where late in that, where they're in there and the one guy like tries to make a run for it, one of Paul's friends, and they stop him and Paul brings him back in, and then like he just kind of comes over and they're playing cards and he's just like, they're like, you want to play? And he's just like, yeah,
I guess. What else is there to do?
Like, what else is there to do? Like, everybody else is losing their mind. We can't leave the bunker. Like, might as well play cards. Any last thoughts or anything on All Quiet on the Western Front?
I just want to reiterate how like beautifully bleak that last couple shots are. I wasn't really sure how this movie was going to end, because it just kind of meanders and follows Paul throughout his life and all the various, not ups and downs, but different types of downs he experiences, and for it to end on that like very poetic but intensely tragic note of him reaching for this butterfly, which gives a sense of like this vague interest that maybe he once had when he was a very different person before the war completely took over his life. Like, he can't even have that. He can't even like reach for and like inspect this butterfly without getting shot unexpectedly. I think that even if the movie ended there and we didn't have like the superimposition of like the boys marching off to war with the graveyard behind them, like that would be enough of a dour note to end on. But
well, it's just like this like final like just reach for like, oh, this is something, there's like just beauty, joy, nature, like,
yeah, no, you can't have that, not when war is happening. It just seems like this total indictment of any system in which rich, powerful people send powerless and naive young people off to their deaths. I really thought it was powerful.
Yeah, no, I think it's definitely. I highly recommend it. It's one, like we said at the beginning, like it is just the remasters and the way they've revitalized the film. Like, it's beautiful. It's such a beautiful. It feels very modern. I think it's one, even though it's from 1930, that modern audiences could watch and not really miss a beat on. It doesn't feel like, it's not the Jazz Singer again, like that is just kind of. It's there for the novelty of it. This one again, it's made 3 years later and sounds amazing. Not only just the dialogue, like the dialogue between people, but also, like we were talking about before, the sounds of the bombs, the sounds of the mortars, the sounds of just the bodies and knives and guns in the trenches, like the mud, like you really feel this movie. In a way that just kind of reminds you just how useful like just basic cinematic tenets can be used. Like, again, like, I like Dunkirk. I wasn't super hot on the new Quiet on the Western Front or 1917, but I feel like all three of those movies just really lean on
spectacle,
kind of more on spectacle and these more modern advances to kind of like really like they want you like almost with like a thing over your head, just like experiencing it, and you're like, I don't know, I felt like I experienced the hell out of this movie,
just because it is closer to when it actually happened and probably involved people who actually lived it, I think makes it a more powerful like artifact of that experience than any sort of modern attempt of like recreating it. I don't know.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree. I think, the more like kind of a modern version that I think is relatively close is like Billy Lynn's Long Halftime Walk, the Ang Lee movie, which is, it's covering the Iraq War, pretty close to, it came out just, relatively recently. So, it's pretty close to that. I mean, I think that's a close comparison there in terms of, which is also like reckoning with like the coming home from battle to a degree. But no, All Quiet on the Western Front, highly recommend. Like I said, there's a free, really, really nice transfer of it on archive.org if you would like to watch it. But yeah, no, I think definitely check. I mean, especially if you're fans of like the movies like Dunkirk and 1917, like these more modern, I think you should go back and watch this one and kind of appreciate a classic that definitely set the field for not only those three, but like Saving Private Ryan and really most war movies and like how they're portrayed.
Can you think of other war movies from around this time? I don't know if I can think of anything that predates this that is as big of a name.
Not off the top of my head. I feel like well, I mean, I don't know if we're going to count like Civil War sequences from like Birth of a Nation and movies like that.
Yeah, but that shit sucks.
Again, it also sucks. Yeah, no, again, but I'm just like saying like war being portrayed on film. I feel like there's probably some from the American Revolution, or not the American Revolution, the Civil War, because that was pretty close in America. But no, I don't know. I at least off the top of my head, I can't think of a war movie.
Yeah, me neither. This feels kind of foundational in that way.
I mean, to a degree, you can. When did the General come out?
General is 1926.
So that doesn't have the scope,
yeah.
But still, like in terms of like kind of like back
or the tone.
Or the tone.
Wings is 1927. Yeah. I haven't seen Wings, though it also doesn't seem nearly as bleak as All Quiet on the Western Front. Hold on, I'm looking to see if there's anything else. Bunch of stuff that looks vaguely familiar. The Last Command, The Enemy. Yeah, this seems like a pretty big one to watch if you're a fan of war movies at all.
Yeah, and this won the Oscar, surprisingly not Best Picture, but Best Director and Production, which is fair. It's just fair. All right, well, that will wrap up this episode of Cinematary. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Cinematary, on Twitter and Instagram at handle @Cinematary, and on Letterboxd at letterboxd.com/Cinematary, where we list all the movies that we talked about in this episode. If you would like to support the show, we talked a little bit last week, if you want to see Film Theory and Chill come back, things like that. So think about supporting the Patreon. You can literally do it for $1, plus you get to pick a movie for us to watch. So, I mean, come on. But thank you to our patrons, Cam, Chad Newsom, Candace Sisson, Ron Hayes, Teresa Marsati, and Tyler Chandler. Thank you so much for your patronage. Next episode, we're going to be continuing our Young Critics Watch Old Movies series with 1945's Children of Paradise, the French film by Marcel Carné, which I honestly don't know too much about, so...
The 1940s is a decade that we have struggled to pick high-profile titles for the last several years.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll find a hidden gem next time.
Yeah, definitely. Until then, thanks y'all for listening. We'll see you next episode.